Hi guys, welcome to Reload Content and Reload Consulting's Customer Journey Mapping for Digital Success webinar. We're broadcasting live. We're just going to wait for a little moment for everybody to arrive. I can see now people are starting to arrive in, and welcome to everybody to this webinar. In the right-hand side of your webinar Jam and Google Hangouts area, you'll see an area that you can type in the feedback, which is called chat, and feel free to type in any messages or questions that you've got to any of us once we get started. So we'll just wait another couple of seconds for other people to arrive in. Thanks again for coming along, and hi to everybody we know, and hi to everybody I'm sure we'll get to know over the next 30 to 40 minutes. This webinar will be live after on YouTube, and we'll send you an automatic link with all the information to it as well. All right, so we'll get started. My name's Llew Jury. I'm the founder and managing director of Reload Business Group, which includes Reload Content and Reload Consulting. Today I've got Courtney from Reload Content. And
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Courtney. And I've got Beck from Reload Consulting.
Hey, guys.
All right, now, enough about me and Reload. I think the best thing we might do is dive straight into the actual broadcast and go through the presentation. So I might hand this over to you, Courtney. Beck, if you want to dive in there.
Awesome.
And we'll get started.
Awesome. So today we're going through customer journey mapping for digital success. So first we're going to start off with what is customer journey mapping. So what it is
I'll just
as the name
get that
suggests.
for you. I'll just flick it up into there.
Technical difficulties right
there
off
we
the
go.
bat.
Hang on, there we go.
There we go. So customer journey mapping, as the name suggests, is a framework for outlining the journey that your consumers actually go on during their purchase cycle. But the main thing to note that it's from their perspective. So this isn't something that should be done based on your perspective. It should actually be you putting yourself in your potential customers' shoes, and not just your current customers as well. You should look at people that actually don't purchase from you as well and map out any potential customer's journey from their perspective. So most frameworks will cover off the traditional steps of you've got awareness, consideration, decision and purchase, retention, loyalty, and finally advocacy. So most customer journey should cover off these key stages of the journey.
So before we dive into what it is, consumer journey is not a sales funnel. It's not a content strategy, a marketing plan, a touch point strategy, or most importantly, something to be created and never looked at again. Itself isn't an outcome. It's a document to guide strategy and tactics moving forward. So the consumer journey is the basis for performing additional work and will guide those strategies and brainstorming sessions that you have after you've gone through this process.
Now, so why actually do a customer journey mapping? So there's a lot of key benefits, but you actually get like a lot more in-depth information of the journey that your customers go through. You actually can map out your current brand touch points and see where you're already reaching your customers on the journey. You can also find additional opportunities for new digital and content touch points.
And also you can go beyond tailoring messaging per segment, and also prioritize different stages with the sales funnel to align with your current digital marketing activity. So just as an overview of the process, which we'll be going into more detail today, first step is to segment those customers, which Beck will take you through. Then it's prioritizing those segments. Once you've done that, then you go into creating those buyer personas. Then you go into also collecting the information, mapping out the process, distributing maps, which by that we mean within the relevant parties within your business. Identifying quick wins, which is also really important. Especially as any business owner, you don't want to just have long-term strategies in place. And then you've got the strategy sessions and then the implementation.
Cool. So where do you start? So first you have to start by segmenting your customers, because not all customers or potential customers go on the same journey. So what you first need to do is actually have a look at who your customers are and what segments they fall into. So one of the first and easiest ways to start to segment your customers, if you don't already have segments, is to talk to your sales and customer service teams to gain some informal feedback. So this can be just asking them about the types of customers that they talk to on a regular basis, the potential leads that they talk to, just to get an understanding of the different types of customers that you do potentially have. Then you can take it a step further as well, and you can actually analyze your existing customer database using potentially any CRM systems that you currently have, and actually doing a deep dive into those and getting some quantitative insights into who your customers currently are. And then finally, you can actually do some in-depth interviews with customers to get more clarification on the segments. So this would be the ideal situation. Once you've talked to your sales teams and your customer service teams, you've analyzed your existing database, then actually getting insights from your customers directly through some actual primary research as well. So from there, traditional segments have been based on things like age, gender, geographics, education, employment, and income. So often when we ask customers about our clients about who their customers are, they generally say, oh, they're males and females from 35 to 65, which generally isn't, it doesn't give you enough information to be able to accurately target who your customers are with appropriate messages.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, like Beck said, it doesn't allow you to truly understand who your audience is and what motivates them. So therefore, it can have a little impact on the most appropriate messaging and channels that you should be using to reach your customers and build that relationship with them, which is something that obviously Beck in Consulting does a lot and really quite well.
Yeah, so going above and beyond the traditional age and gender, you can actually have a look at the wants. So what your customers actually want from a solution, their psychographics, so what they value, and actually get into their mindset. Have a look at their behavior, so how they behave in given situations, their beliefs, so what they actually believe in, their lifestyle, so how they choose to use their leisure time and their disposable income. And the two most important ones we've highlighted here for the segmentation methods you can use is actually their needs. So having a look at what different customers actually need, and also their motivators. So what's actually motivating them to make a purchase. So generally talking to clients, if they actually think about it from this point of view, it's a lot easier to then segment who your customers are based on their needs and their motivations. Because often you have a really huge age range, and they can be male or female. They can be any age bracket, income bracket, any kind of background. And so instead, by grouping by what they need or what they are motivated by, it can be a lot easier to get true segments from your customers.
Yeah, and from a content perspective too, obviously once I know this kind of information as well when I'm creating content, you definitely can be creating content that appeals to your entire audience. But once you start knowing the needs and the motivations behind the audience, you can create content that appeals to these needs and motivations, and then that way you can make it a lot more specific and direct to what they're actually looking for.
Yeah, and one of the questions that we often get asked is, when should we actually create a new segment? So for some niche companies, you may only need one segment. So your customers may have all the same motivations and the same needs. But generally, when you do need to create a new segment and actually segment your customers out, it's when the audience can't effectively be reached with the same messages, interventions, and channels. So now, once you've kind of got all of your different segments, then you need to actually prioritize them. So you may find that you've got all of these different potential segments ranging from, you may have up to 10 or 20 different potential segments. And obviously you can't probably target all of them at once. So we like to prioritize your segments so that you can work out which ones you should focus your marketing dollars on to get the most impact. And you can look at things like size, accessibility, opportunity, need, profitability, things like that in order to prioritize them. And we've actually created a worksheet for you to help prioritize your segments, which is available for download. We'll actually put an offer up now for you.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And while Lou's getting that up, I just also wanted to say that by prioritizing your segments, this will also help you prioritize further content ideas, channel selection as well, choosing what channels you're going to be using to reach those audiences, and essentially where you should be allocating your resources. And I can understand that a lot of businesses have limited resources sometimes. So it's good to be able to prioritize based on who your audience is.
So guys, if you have a look over on your right-hand side of your screen, there's the offers button next to the chat for some of you guys. You'll see there you can hit download now, and that download basically goes to Reload Consulting to download that document that Beck was talking about. Just while we're pausing, basically, thanks for the feedback to James and Brendan. The bandwidth at some people's ends is the reason why sometimes it's a little bit fuzzy. But yeah, look, we're going to send these through so you'll be able to see them anyway. And we can probably upload these to SlideShare as well, these slides too, if everybody's feeling that it's a little bit fuzzy and you can actually have a crisper version. We might send that out with a link in the next couple of hours after this as well. So yeah, over on offers, you'll see the document that, the worksheet that Beck was talking about. I'll hand it back up to here. You can go back if you want, or forward.
No, yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, so now we get into actually creating buyer personas. So once you've segmented your market, again, have another discussion with the sales team and the customer service teams around each of the different segments that you've identified in order to get a bit more information about each potential target. And then actually, again, you can do some more in-depth interviews with chosen customers. So for each segment, you can actually have in-depth interviews asking a lot of questions about why they chose you, why they didn't, what their needs and motivators are, and actually get some qualitative feedback. Again, that can be an official kind of research piece. You can actually get, third-party companies in to do that for you, and that will make sure that it's a bit more open and honest feedback from your clients. And then you can also do an online survey to get quantitative confirmation. So once you've gone through the process of creating your buyer personas, you may actually then want to do an online survey with each of your different segments to confirm all of the needs and perceptions that you've already identified.
Just diving in there, Beck, very quickly, we've got Rochelle and Camira, sorry. You've got Sit Tight still coming up. That's a Hangout thing. I'd go back and refresh your Hangouts. So that's guys, if you're having the Sit Tight for the webinar jam come up, you need to go back and just refresh it. So yeah, reconnect. James there is helping with the reconnect button at the bottom of the page. So either you refresh it, get out, come back in, and you re-log in, or you basically just do what James says there and hit reconnect at the bottom. We'll keep going.
Cool. Hopefully you'll all be able to hear and see us. So for your buyer personas, generally they need to contain a name, a real life description and image, goals and motivators of the target markets, what challenges they face, and also the key products and service propositions that are going to best relate to them based on their needs.
And we've actually got a bit of a surprise buyer persona, which Llew only just came across as we introed this webinar. So basically we've got Luxurious Llew. I won't go into too much detail and read it all out, but basically, as we've highlighted here, we've got the name, and alliteration is used also because it's a lot more memorable. So it's a lot easier, even internally, if you're creating content or you're figuring out touch point strategies and things like that, you can refer to, all right, how's Luxurious Llew responding to this? What would he think about this? And then going into the real life description and also have an image there. Looking at the goals and motivations. So here we've got Llew enjoys the finer things in life, but also loves a great deal. And also, just to go back as well, this is based on a customer buying wine. So this is looking at his challenges as well when he's purchasing wine. He doesn't have time to shop around. He's a business owner. He's busy and he doesn't usually go to the local store. So he definitely relies on recommendations, reviews, and deals delivered to his inbox. So already that gives me ideas around content and how you could be boosting reviews and making sure that you've got marketing automation set up so that there's emails going to his inbox. The last one is key product and service propositions. So Llew appreciates good service and free on-time delivery to his office. And as a thing to keep Llew coming back and buying wine again, he needs a range of brands to choose from and one-off deals that are worth telling friends about. So basically, this is just an example. And as I said, this is having these buyer personas, especially with an approach to content. You've got that human element. So rather than just always pitching corporate talk, sales talk, and just more about your product. You're actually aligning it with Llew's needs and looking at your persona to see what motivates them.
So Courtney, quick question for you. Would this be for something, a company like our friends down at Vino Mofo, that they could sort of say, Llew is in the luxurious category and send him offers for fine wine and not the other stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there might be someone else, who's actually profiled for mid-range, or someone profiled who likes cost-effective solutions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Obviously, this is only one buyer persona, and someone like Vino Mofo, they've probably got 10 different buyer personas. So it's important that you don't just focus on the one persona, and you do map out a few of them if you can. But then if you are just focusing on the one persona, just make sure that that's going to be your focus, and that's what your objectives and goals are aligned to as well.
Perfect. So once you've got your buyer personas created for all of your different segments, then you start the actual customer journey mapping process. So the first step of that is actually collecting the information that you need to put these maps together. So one of the best sources of insights that you can start off with is, again, talking to your sales team. So you get potential insight into not only existing customers, but potential customers as well, based on their interactions that actually may then go on to choose competitors. So you can get a lot of insight around who they're talking to on a daily basis, the types of questions that potential customers are asking, and then also why they actually choose potentially competitors as well over your product or service. Then you can also talk to the customer service team. So these guys will have really good insights into who your current customers are, and you can actually get insight based on the interactions with actual customers. So this is really good for understanding who your actual customers are, what they look like, and why they actually chose you as well. And then finally, you can get information directly from the customers. So this is the ideal situation. The ideal situation is that you get the sales team, the customer service team, but then also directly from the customers. And again, coming back to those in-depth interviews, you can actually ask your customers a lot of questions around the journey that they actually went through directly from them. Ideally, you would want to do this by using a third party to get some more honest feedback rather than through the customer service teams. But they can be a really good source of actual information as well. Okay, so now the actual process that you go through when you're mapping out the journeys. So generally we start off with each stage. So we go through the awareness, the consideration, the decision and purchase, the retention and loyalty, and then the advocacy stage. So you may actually choose to map out like custom stages. So within each of these stages, you'll go through and actually work out, okay, what is happening with the consumer at every stage. And then you'll actually go through and work out, you'll give each stage kind of like a name and a description as to what's actually happening. Then you'll go through and say, okay, how long are they potentially in? So a time frame for each stage. And this is just to get a good understanding of whether are they spending one day within this stage and making a decision and moving on to the next stage? Or is it more around a couple of months up to a year? Sometimes, particularly in the awareness stages, it can be 6 months plus that a consumer is potentially in this stage of the cycle. Then you go through and have a look at what they're feeling at each stage. So this is really important to map out if they're excited or if they're sad or if they're really stressed, so that you can best, again, tailor your messages based on their feelings. Because if they're feeling really stressed and anxious, you don't want to be too over the top happy and really excited. You need to reflect what they're feeling as well. And then what they're thinking, what their thoughts are. So this is often a lot of questions, particularly in the awareness and the consideration stage. Consumers generally have a lot of questions about either the product or what they're going through. So it's really important to map out everything that they're potentially thinking, everything that's going through their mind. And again, this isn't just related to your product. They may be going through, for example, if they're buying a house or moving home, then you need to map out everything that they're thinking, not just related to, okay, if you're a mover, just thinking about the move process. And this is how, by extending it to thinking it from their perspective, that's when you get some really great insights. And then you have a look at behavior. So what they're doing from an online and offline perspective. So this may be things like, okay, they're doing a lot of research and they're actually searching on Google, or they're really active on social, or they're talking to friends and family, or they're having to actually go in store and do something. So what are they actually doing during this time? Then what they actually need. So finally, for each stage going through, okay, what do they need from every stage to get them into the next stage? So for example, they may need a quote back, they may need reassurance, they may need just deciding that, yep, that's what I'm going to do. So they'll probably need something at every stage to be able to get into the next stage. Then we'll go through the current touch points. So this is really good for mapping out where you're currently already intercepting people. So this may be your website. It may be they call the sales team. They may see a brochure. They may go to an event and actually see you there. So where are customers currently potentially touching you? And then finally, if you do have time, the potential touch points. So we don't generally include this in every customer journey mapping session because it does tend to get a little bit too much. But particularly if you're a new company, you may actually want to map out the potential touch points. So if you don't have a lot of existing touch points, you may start to, during the session, brainstorm some additional ways that you could actually be reaching customers at each stage.
Yeah, and obviously on the screen right now, it all looks very structured, but when you drawing this out on the whiteboard, things get messy. So feel free to get creative and try to get as many things written down as you can, particularly if you've got a big group of people in the room. Everyone's throwing ideas at you and you're trying to scribe on the whiteboard. So just as an example too, with those potential touch points, obviously when you're going through the mapping process, we've got the optional there because it's more important to map out everything above that potential touch points. Usually here, we'll book in another brainstorming session to go through those potential touch points because it can get draining. It can be a long process. So those potential touch points, I highly recommend you book out another session, get food and coffee involved to fuel the mental muscles. And basically with an example here, say you've got someone that is downsizing their home. I know that Beck mentioned the custom stages here. So basically, as an example of a first stage, something like market research could be one of the first stages that this person is going through. And they could be in this stage for over 3 months. So already we've got 3 months onto that timeline. And then the thoughts around here can be very broad. It doesn't have to be really specific things. It can be, where should I live? How much is my house worth? What can I afford? Also, what's the lifestyle going to be like? So moving down as well on the online behavior, that can include things like just searching on Google and looking at realestate.com.au. So you don't have to get too specific at the start here. It's just, you're going to find that there's going to be very broad dot points in those initial stages. And then obviously the next stage from market research is they could be looking into decluttering and improving. So they could be within this time frame for 1 to 6 months. So already from the awareness and consideration stage until they actually make the move, we're already looking at 9 months plus. So feelings in this stage with decluttering, improving, we've got feelings like feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed, over it, anxious. So that just gives you some examples of things that you can be recording in those feelings. Beck, did you have anything to add on?
No.
No? All good. So that's just some examples. We definitely can maybe send you, if you've got any more questions around examples to go into those touch points, just shoot those questions through.
Yeah, and the thing is, they're very custom. Each session that we do is completely different because the process that customers go through is different every time. So generally, like Courtney said, it's a messy whiteboard session, but it ends up being really good because it is custom to each customer.
So I had a quick question. I thought I might jump in.
Yeah.
How long does this process take? I mean, and what's the biggest part of it? Like, this seems like a fairly in-depth, consulting project. On average, for a small business or a medium business, how long would it take? And then for a large business, how long would it take?
So it really depends, again, on how many. If you already have your segments and your buyer personas down pat, then this process doesn't take that long. So we do have some top tips on the next slide that we'll go through. But generally, each actual mapping process, we do about a 2-hour workshop to go through the journey map for each buyer persona that you've identified. And so it can take anywhere from 1 month to go through all of your buyer personas. If you wanted to, you could do it in probably a week. If you've got the time and the energy to do that. But anyways, up to probably about 6 months for a large business to go through the full process of segmenting your audience, creating the buyer personas, mapping out the process for every persona. But then you've also got the work that comes after that as well. Like Courtney flagged at the start, this isn't actually a guide to anything. It's a base document to then help you drive strategy moving forward. So yeah, I would say anywhere from a week to 6 months.
Okay, thanks, Beck.
Yeah. So top tips. So for a successful mapping session, ideally use insights from primary research direct from the customer wherever possible. So if you can go into the session already with insights and a guideline based on information direct from your customer, that would be ideal. Then you can get feedback from those that deal with customers and leads on a regular basis. So try and get your sales team and your customer service team, or at least a representative from each, in the session with you. So those that actually deal with customers and leads, because they will be an invaluable source of information.
And just to jump in there, Beck, what about business owners that don't really have that to call on salespeople and people that deal with the customers? How would you recommend that they approach that?
Yeah, as long as there's someone that does deal with customers. So if you are a business owner and it's just yourself working in the business, then obviously you're going to have the best source of information. And that's when it probably would be best to get a third party involved to facilitate that and also ask the questions and get that direct customer research as well. So yeah, if you are on the smaller side, then that's probably what we'd recommend, so that you get the insights direct from the customer, and then you can also have someone kind of help you through the process.
Awesome.
So third top tip, make educated assumptions and use personal experiences where needed. This isn't a concrete approach. You do sometimes have to make assumptions on what people are thinking and feeling, and you may also have to tap into your personal experiences as well. I know, for example, a lot of people have had to move house, or they've bought a puppy, or they've gone and planned a holiday. So you do probably have to tap into some of your personal experiences if you don't have that depth of customer research. Also, put yourself in the consumer's position and go through the journey from their perspective. So this is really, really important, and something that can often derail a successful mapping session is if you start talking about, oh, well, we do this, we do that. It shouldn't be about you as a company. It should be about your consumers. So really try, and that's why the buyer personas are really necessary before you get into a mapping session, so that you've got an idea of, okay, this is who it is. If we're talking about luxurious Llew, we need to put ourselves in Llew's position and map out the journey from his point of view, not from our point of view as the company. Only tackle one segment per session and workshop. So this is really important. It can be really draining. 2 hours doesn't sound like a long time, but there's a lot going on, and everyone's generally a little bit exhausted by the end of it. So don't try and squish too much into one session. Just tackle one segment, one buyer persona per workshop. Block off at least 2 hours per workshop as well. You're not going to get it done in less than that, unfortunately. And then finally, consider using a third party to run the sessions to facilitate discussion and ensure that all opinions are heard. So yeah, you can try and do this obviously by yourselves, but if you can, try and get a third party or someone that's not actively involved in those teams, so that you can facilitate discussion, ask those key questions, extract the information, ensure that all opinions are heard, and help with the process, because it really does make a huge difference.
So what should I do next? Basically, the first one straight off the bat is document the customer journey map. So got some dot points under there. I won't go through all of them, but yeah, you want that full document with including all the questions, the feelings, and the needs. And as we said at the start, this is something that you can refer to, forever really. You can keep coming back and looking at it, but it's definitely something you need to have documented. Next step is to share each version with relevant parties. So any internal marketing teams you have, any other third-party agencies, which is really important. So if you've got web developers, if you've got digital marketing agencies, also sharing this with them is going to help them with your digital marketing and also your website or what other work they're doing for you. And thirdly is the strategy workshop. So as we said, this is not just, it's that documented that you can be using for other digital strategies, for content marketing strategies, sales strategies, other lead nurturing strategies that you're putting together. So I guess, yeah, it serves a purpose for a lot of different things, and it just depends on what your business's goals and objectives are with in terms of what strategy workshops you're booking in. So how this benefits your digital marketing activity, we're going to just talk through 4 of those, which is the channel selection, the content, the measurement, and also the budget. So looking at channel selection, you'll be looking at online and offline behavior to start the brainstorm, and looking at which new channels need to be added to reach these users at the stage of the funnel. So you may be focusing on Facebook a lot, and then throughout this process, you might find, hang on a second, we should be on LinkedIn. So there's definitely going to be more insights into what channels you should be using. So it can also look at new search campaigns based on the questions that are asked and also what they're feeling or their thoughts are. Display campaigns based on the websites that they're looking at, what they're searching for on Google. Social media campaigns based on social activity. So if you find that there's a lot of your customer is looking a lot on social media, using social media, and you're not on there, maybe that's an opportunity there to start a social media campaign. Also remarketing based on having previously browsed other sections of the site. So, for example, if they're looking at realestate.com.au, that's an opportunity there. You know that they're using that site during the awareness stage. So maybe that's somewhere you can capitalize on with remarketing. Also content promotion based on content being read. And linking into the content marketing opportunities, obviously adjustment of existing content and creation of new content to answer all key questions. So FAQs are a huge thing. If you're answering the frequently asked questions, I mean, you're already well ahead with that, because obviously that is what your customers want to know. That is what they need to know. So if you're answering those, that's a really good start. So also looking at updates to the content on the website, it can help you see, okay, maybe the FAQ section is pretty light on, maybe we need to boost that a little bit. Also changes to the ad messaging to reflect tone and key needs. If you've got display campaigns that are tailoring someone who's feeling stressed and you're all bright and cheery, that may not be the right kind of tone that you need to be using at that stage. Creation of helpful gated content to capture those soft leads at early stages as well. So you'll find that as you go through the thoughts and the feelings of those early stages, again, there may be questions that you can address at those stages with some gated content. And also through that, while you gate it, you get those emails and you can start nurturing those leads. Also updates to follow up communication based on key questions and decision-making criteria. And Beck, did you want to go into measurement and reporting?
Yeah. So when you have your customer journey maps all sorted, you may then, as Courtney was saying, choose different channels and customize your content based on each stage of the different journeys. So once you've done that, then it's really important to actually look at measuring how each of those different stages is performing. So it may be a little bit difficult to start off with, because each section of the journey will have different metrics associated with them and what success equals. So for example, if you're a sales company, you're not going to be able to get sale, obviously, as a measurement for success in the awareness section. So they all need to be measured quite differently. So once you've got all of your channels and your content created, that's when you can go and actually have a look at how you should be measuring each of these. So in the awareness stage, you may want to have a look at things like impressions, new visitors, reach, video views. So how well your brand and your new content is actually getting out there and reaching those targeted audience. And then in the consideration stage, you may have a look at people that are actually viewing the product and the service pages. So those key pages on your website, how many people are actually viewing them? How many people are downloading PDFs, requesting quotes, potentially adding your product to their cart? All of those things that suggest that they're actively considering. Then in the decision stage, how many people are inquiring either by calling or submitting an online inquiry form, actually purchasing, so making the purchase online, or measuring potentially the in-store visits as well. Then in the retention stage, you may want to measure things like repeat purchases, people logging into their account, which is just they're coming back and they're logging in, people that are commenting on your blog, and potentially those that are actually signing up to your newsletter as well. And then finally, in the advocacy stage, you may want to be measuring things like product reviews, so how satisfied people are and coming back and being brand advocates. If they're posting or sharing your blog content, that's fantastic as well, and potentially forwarding emails to friends as well. So those are just some of the different metrics that you can measure at each stage. And as you can see, each stage does need very different success metrics measured against them. And again, you don't want to go overboard with these. Probably pick at least 2 or 3 key metrics that you want to focus on within each stage, and then you can measure that month on month and see how all of your channels and your content is performing from there. And then finally, budget allocation. So now that you've again tailored your marketing around the stages of the customer journey, you then want to allocate the budget based on each stage of the funnel in order to achieve your business and marketing goals. So how you actually choose to allocate that budget based on the journey will vary greatly depending on the company, the target market, the competition, and your internal budgets as well. But generally, if you have a sales focus, you want to start and focus your budget at the decision-making section of the funnel, obviously. So you want to make sure that all existing demand is already captured. So when you're mapping out your budget, you want to make sure that at that decision-making stage, you're capturing all of the budget there. Then if you have a leads focus, you probably want to start in the consideration section. And we find a lot of clients are really successful by putting a significant amount of budget here, because that will then help build the leads if you do have gated content and tactics like that within that section, because that then helps the lead funnel for the sales team to then follow through on. So it really helps build that funnel for your sales team. And if you have a retention focus, so if your goal is to retain clients and keep existing clients happy, then you obviously want to start at the loyalty section and focus a lot of the budget and your tactics there to encourage repeat purchases. Okay, next steps. So I know that we've covered a lot today. So we've got 8 key steps for you to do after this. So step 1, segment your customer base. So go through the process and actually work out how many different segments you have and what they look like. Then download our prioritization worksheet for your target audiences. So then you can actually go through and prioritize. If you only need to focus on one at first, find your highest priority target market and do the process for that. If you do have the time, you can do them all. That's fantastic. But it is still good to prioritize so that you can also then work out where you want to share your budget as well. Then create your buyer personas for each of your key audiences. So once you know which ones you want to focus on for the next 12 months, create buyer personas for those key audiences that you feel have the most potential and get them really solidified. Then you can complete the customer journey workshops for each target segment. So for each buyer persona, book in those customer journey workshops and run through that and do that process for each of your buyer personas there. Then write up and distribute your maps to internal staff and agencies. So actually document them, get all of everything that was on the whiteboard, everything that was thrown around in the room, write that up and distribute it with internal staff and your agencies so everyone knows who your customers are and the journey that they're going on. That's really, really important. Number 6, you can actually identify any quick wins. So during the session, you may have some new additional touch points that you want to add in straight away, or some changes to the content on your website, some changes to the messaging. So you may actually want to do some adjustments to the business as usual based on the insights that you gained during that session. But then what you want to do is book in brainstorming sessions and actually create some strategies moving forward. So you can use these as the basis to have some brainstorming sessions around new digital, and that's when you can look at the new types of channels that you want to be on and where you want to allocate budget. You can do a content brainstorming session like Courtney mentioned, where you brainstorm a lot of new content ideas based on all of the thoughts and feelings of your target market. You may also have a sales brainstorming session and work out how you can use this customer journey to follow into your sales process and what you may need to change from that point of view. And then after you have those brainstorming sessions, create action plans based on the session outcomes. So you may want to do a content strategy, a digital channel plan, actually create step-by-step what needs to happen, what new channels you're on and why, and create an action plan for the next 12 months. So it seems overwhelming, but there's only 8 steps. So hopefully based on this session, you'll be able to feel a bit more confident. You'll be able to start segmenting your customer database if you haven't already, and creating buyer personas and customer journeys.
Great, excellent. And there's the information. Please contact Reload Consulting, Reload Content. Now, before we go, is there any questions that people had in relation to the content they heard today? If they just want to type it into the chat channel there, I'll just click across to here. And if there's any questions, please let us know. Otherwise, you're always welcome to get in touch through the Reload Consulting website or Reload Content. Just search for Reload Content. That will go through to Reload Media's site, but there's a whole dedicated page that can get to Courtney. So I don't think there's any questions coming up, but it's been a comprehensive and fascinating webinar today. Oh, there's one. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Matt, for the question, and also James. They're coming thick and fast now. So Matt has a question. Can I have the YouTube link? Yes, you can have the YouTube link. We'll send that to you automatically, Matt. James has a question. What tools do you guys use to manage your mapping? So that's from James. Quick one there.
Yep.
Before we go.
To be honest, it's actually quite simple. We don't use any fancy tools. We literally have a whiteboarding session for the actual journey mapping, and then we generally type up pretty much a table of all of the information that's gathered so that you've got all the detail that's required. And then we often also put it into a story. So this is probably a little bit more text heavy, and it's just actually going through, again, using those buyer personas. For example, if it's luxurious Llew, we then talk through the story of each stage that Llew goes through and his thoughts and his feelings. So yeah, you don't actually need any tools to be able to map that out, which is awesome.
And also, just a little tip there, it's also really good to have someone that's actually typing out the notes live in the session, because I find that sometimes whiteboarding isn't everyone's strong suit. So you want to have as much context as possible when you're just in the room and writing that down so that you've got that ready to go when you're out of the session.
Yeah, you may also want to record the session as well if you don't have the resources available to write it as you go. But yeah, no tools needed, which is awesome.
Excellent. Well, look, and thanks for all the feedback and thanks. And there'll be another webinar next month. Thanks to Courtney and thanks to Beck for some great content. And guys, you'll get this on a link to YouTube in a couple of hours. And thanks for attending.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.